Hey everyone, welcome to Meeple Bits. Thanks for joining me today. In today's how-to, we're going to tackle the game Small Samurai Empires, where we're going to lead our houses to victory in this action programming area control style game. A game for 2 to 4 players with a playtime of 30 to 60 minutes. In this video, we're only going to tackle the base game and setup and mechanics. There are 3 or 4 variants that we are not going to address in this video, so please keep that in mind as we continue forward. So join me as we go through the setup and how-to for the game Small Samurai Empires. So before we begin, let's take a look at the components that are going to come out during the course of play. To begin, we have samurai armies and castles, order tokens, food tokens, and Bushido tokens. Here we have the influence board, in each color of the regions on the main board, the destiny cards, also in the same colors, the victory point board, and the main play board. There are 4 regions to the board: purple, teal, orange, and gray. There's various areas on the board that we'll cover in depth in a bit. In addition, we have the player screens, one in each player color. And lastly, the variant tokens, which we're not going to cover in this video, but they are in the box, so let's touch them here. Now that we've seen the components that we're going to use during the course of play, let's go ahead and begin setup. To start, have each player take the tokens in the color of their choice, as well as the corresponding screen. A lot of the recording of this video is going to have the main board in a horizontal position while viewing, but please forgive that. I hope it's still visible and everything makes sense. In addition, during gameplay, these 2 boards, your influence board and the victory point board, as well as the sort of order board section, these are going to mostly be on the top area, but I wanted to make sure that everything was visible for you guys. So to begin setup, put the main board in the middle of the table for all players to reach. Then put the victory point track somewhere off to the side that is, again, visible and reachable by all players, as well as an area for the influence board. For the influence board, it's important to keep a space below it, so however you configure your table, you'll need to keep some area underneath it to add destiny cards. Now that all players have the color of their choosing and all samurai tokens, castles, and other markers in the color of their choosing, give each player 2 Bushido tokens and 2 food tokens and 3 destiny cards. Next, take 6 Bushido and 6 food seeding tokens and randomly place them on the harvest icon around the map, so there should be 12 total. So simply shuffle them and then randomly place them. So when complete, it should look something like this. Next, have each player take the square tokens, or the square marker tokens, placing 1 in the sort of 0 section of the victory point board, and 1 in each of the regions on the influence board. So in this 2-player game that we're going to set up for, each player will have cubes in all spaces. So when you're finished, it'll look something like this. And then lastly, determine the first player in any method you choose. I like to use the app Schwazi, so in this one, we'll simply randomly place them. So yellow will go first, red will go second, and in a 3 or 4 player game, you would fill in the other markers. This will set the turn order in the first era, which would get changed as we continue through the game, but players will take their actions in this turn order. Then have each player take 2 of their samurai armies, placing them in the capital region, the capital city of each region. So all players would start with 2 armies in each region's capital city, and your end result looks something like this. With setup complete and we're about ready to begin going through the gameplay, let's take a closer look at the order tokens and their icons so that we can understand the types of orders we're going to be giving our troops. So before going into gameplay, let's take a quick look at the board as well as the order tokens. To begin, there are 4 regions of Japan on the board of 4 different colors: purple, teal, orange, and gray down at the bottom. In each region, there are a different number of provinces within each. So this teal color is a region, and each white bordered area is a province within. This region and province will become important as we set to place orders as well as handle additional scoring for influence and victory points. There are 7 types of orders to give, starting with recruit armies. If giving the recruit armies order, you may then add 1 army from your supply, so taking one of your samurai meeples and placing it into the capital city of the region of where you've placed the order. Additionally, if you have a castle in a province within that region, you may place an army in that location instead. Additionally, you may spend 1 food token, the green tokens, you may spend 1 food token to place a second army in the capital city of a province or a province where you have a castle. Move 3. This allows you to assign 3 movement points to an army or meeple in a province. So if I have 1, I may move this token up to 3 times. 1, 2, 3, even crossing borders into other provinces. If I have, say, 3 armies within this region, I can assign those points and spread them out. So I could move 3 of my armies 1 time. Move 2 or 3. This works similar to the 3, although I may assign only 2 movement points, and to use a 3rd movement point, I would need to spend 1 food token. Move 2 or move by ship. This works where I can choose either or. I may assign 2 movement points and move my armies 2 spaces, or 2 separate armies 1 space, or I can take up to 2 armies within a coastal province and move them to any other coastal province on the map. I would pay 1 food to use that action. Attack. On my turn, I may attack a rival army that I share a province with. So in this example, yellow may attack red using this action. Additionally, I could spend 1 Bushido token and attack a second time, removing up to 2 armies that I share a province with. Harvest. Here I can harvest a location within the region where I have an army that shares with a resource token in that province. So in this example, if I trigger the order for harvest, I would take 1 Bushido and 1 food token. I do not have an army down here, so I would not collect for this one. And it only applies to the region that I've assigned the orders, so I would not collect any resources in a different region. And lastly, build castle. I have the opportunity to build a castle in a region of a province where I have 2 armies. I would replace those 2 armies with a castle. However, if I already have a castle within a region, I can then use it to place 1 army within the province of my castle. And a couple of things to note about castles is that they count for purposes of control as 2 points, and armies are only 1. So within this province, I have a 3-point control of that province. A player cannot lose control of a castle. More than 1 player's castle may be built in a province. And when gaining influence at the end of an era, which we'll cover in a moment, each castle gives 1 influence regardless of the region control. And those are your order tokens that you're going to use during the game. So let's go ahead and look at the gameplay and the different phases. Now we're ready to begin gameplay. Small Samurai Empires is a game played over the course of 3 eras, with each era consisting of 2 phases, and each phase consisting of 2 stages, the planning stage and the resolution stage. Let's go ahead and dive in and see what that gameplay looks like. During the planning phase of the first round of an era, each player is going to play a destiny card. All players should select a destiny card, placing it face down in front of them, declaring it. Once all players have it declared, they will be revealed simultaneously and placed underneath the influence board. In a 2-player game specifically, an additional destiny card will be chosen from the top of the destiny deck and placed underneath the influence board. That is only in a 2-player game. Phase 2 of the first round is the resolution phase. Here, each player, in turn order accordance to the turn track on the point board, will play one of their order tokens on any available empty spots only, any available spots around each region. So yellow player is first, and let's pretend that they wanted to go into the teal region. They would place their token here, also understanding that in the first round of the era, the order of operations for resolution are going to be from the bottom to the top. In the second round, the resolution will happen from top to bottom, which we'll cover in just a moment. So, in turn order, each player is going to place face down one of their order tokens. In addition, wherever they've placed it, they may take the neutral action in that region next to the spot where they've placed their token. So in this example, yellow player could attack in this region where they share a province with another army. So yellow could then attack red from this province. This will continue until all players have placed the number of order tokens in accordance with the gameplay. In a 2 or 3 player game, all players in the first round of the era will place a total of 4 order tokens, and in the second round they would place a total of 3 tokens. So keep that in mind when planning strategy, that in the first round of the era you're going to place a total of 4 tokens in a 2 or 3 player game, and in a 4 player game each player is only going to place 3 tokens in the first round and 2 tokens in the second round. So yellow player has placed a token here, attacking a player here, so then next red would place their next token, and let's say for example they wanted to go here in the orange region and give them the opportunity to place an army. They can place that army in the capital city or where they have a castle. Here at the beginning of the game, only the capital city. And then back and forth it'll go until, as I mentioned, all tokens for the round have been set. So let's say this person wanted to go, yellow wanted to put one here. The movement token or the movement neutral action lets them move over here for a potential resource. And then red would go here. Let's say they wanted to attack an army there, doing the neutral action. Next player, let's say they wanted to go here, put an army there. You guys get it. So I'm just going to go ahead and place these out here until I've got 4 on the board. Okay, so now that each player has placed in a 2 or 3 player game the 4 order tokens for the first round, we're ready to begin to the second phase of the first round, which is the resolution phase. Here, we're going to resolve bottom to top all the order tokens. And interestingly, my just random placing sort of zoned everyone out in this 2-player game. But one by one, we're going to reveal the tokens. Here, red has a movement of 3, so they'll be able to move 3 points. So let's say they wanted to go 1, 2, and they wanted to get out of this capital city, possibly. I forget what I put here. So 3. And then that's going to be their turn. They've moved a total of 3 movement points. Next, they're going to flip the next tile all the way up the track. Another 2, but that's probably a misplacement. I should have played something different there, but you guys get the idea. But here I would be able to move 2 or 3 if I spend a food. Next, we're going to continue up the track, resolving each of these tokens. So here, red player is going to attack. They're going to attack this yellow army, getting it off the board. They're going to place an army next in the capital city. And you know what? They're going to go ahead and spend a food token, which will allow them to place a second army. So it looks like red is bolstering quite a force here in the orange region. Moving up the track, yellow's going to make an attack, thus kicking red out of this region. Also going to place some warriors, and you know what? They too are going to spend a food token to place a second warrior, or a second samurai army. Continuing up the track, they're going to do a harvest action. That harvest action allows them to collect resources in any location that an army exists. So here, they would be able to take 1 food into their supply. They don't have an army here, so they would not be able to take the resource for that. And then lastly, a move 3. So we're going to go ahead and do 1, 2, and let's go down 1 more for 3. So that is the first round of an era, the planning and resolution phase. Next, we move to the second round of an era, which also includes a planning and resolution phase. The difference being that in the first part of the planning phase, there will be no destiny cards used, and you're going to play 1 less order token than you did in the previous round. I'll grab that in a minute. So what that means is, in a 2 or 3 player game, after placing your 4 order tokens, the next phase you get to only place 3. In a 4 player game, you've placed 3 order tokens per player. So in the next phase, you're only going to place 2 order tokens. So for the second round of the planning phase, you may place your token on top of any of your own tokens for free, in any of the empty spots, also for free. And as always, they'll be able to take the neutral action of any location that they've placed their orders in. Lastly, a player may cover up one other player's color 1 time. So in a 2-player game, a player may only cover the other player once. So I could not cover all of their locations like this. And if there were 3 players, then I would say, let's say this were a blue player, then I would be able to cover up both the red and blue player 1 time, at a cost of 1 Bushido. So again, in turn order, accordance to the track, we're going to place in this 2-player game 3 order tokens on the board. On your own tokens, no Bushido cost. Over another player, 1 Bushido token cost. So I'm going to go ahead and place those out and edit it back in. Okay, so now that all orders have been placed, we are ready to begin the next phase of round 2 of an era, which is the resolution phase. Exactly as the other phase, resolution phase, in round 1, we're going to resolve it though from top to bottom. So starting up here, we're going to begin resolving the tokens downward. Starting with this player, they're going to bring in an additional army. And then you know what? They will go ahead and spend that additional food so that they can bring in yet another army. Moving down the track, here we go. Yellow player is going to encroach into the might of red player in this region. Again, also spending a food token to bring in a second army. And then attacking red player, spending also a Bushido token, their last Bushido token, to kill 2 armies within a shared province. Red player is going to harvest, taking a Bushido token into their supply. Yellow player is going to bolster up their forces down south. They're out of food at this point, so they can only place one. And then lastly, red player was hoping to attack, but yellow player covered this action where they would have done an army or a move token, but they would not able to because this was covered up. So a little bit of strategy on yellow's part. And so that completes the first and second rounds of the first era. Now we're ready to begin end era. The end era phase consists of 7 steps, except after the third and final era, in which you're only going to do 5, which will make sense in just a moment. Step 1 of the end era is full harvest. Each player, where they have control of a province that contains a resource, they will be able to collect a resource for that area. So example, yellow controls this province because they're the only one there. So they would take a food token into their supply and then just resolve it down the line. Here, they would take a Bushido token into their supply. Yellow would take another food token here. Red player doesn't yet have control of any resource zones until we get down here into the southern region, where they would take a Bushido token, a food token, and another food token for this province. However, let's assume for just a moment that red had a samurai army sharing control with this player. What that means is that no player has control of this province, so neither player would get the harvest. Conversely, if red player, as an example, had a castle within that province, castles again count for 2 points of control, so red player would take the control of the harvest. However, if, for example, red had a castle and yellow had 2 armies, again, it is a tied control, neither player having control of the province. Step 2 of the end era is to clean up the order tokens. So all players go down the line, collecting their order tokens, bringing them back into their supply behind their screens, getting ready for the next era. Step 3, gain influence. For each province that you control and each castle, so let's just put out a couple of castles for an example. There we go, a couple castles. So for each province that a player controls and for each castle, they would gain 1 influence in that region. So let's start again at the top and work our way down. So in the purple province, in the purple region, red controls 1 province, yellow has control of 2 provinces. So red would go up the influence track 1 and yellow would go up the track 2. Repeat that influence scoring for each of the regions. So here in the teal region, yellow has 1, 2, 3 provinces under control. Red has none, so yellow would move up to 3. Here in the orange, let's see, red has control of this one and control of this one, so that's 2. And yellow has control of this one, which is 1. And lastly, the gray region gives red control of 1, 2, 3 provinces and yellow control of 1. So red would go up 3 on the influence and gray 1. And then that gives them control of the different provinces, but castles additionally award 1 victory point regardless of control. Or rather 1 influence for that region regardless of control. So yellow would move up 1 more in the orange province and red would move up 1 more in the gray region. Step 4 is to receive region bonus points. Players in control of the most and second most provinces within a region will collect the large and small victory point values for each of the regions down the board. So beginning here in the purple region, yellow controls 2 provinces and purple controls 1 province. So yellow would receive 2 victory points and red would receive 1 victory point for control of the purple region. So moving your token up the track, yellow goes up 2, and red goes up 1. In the teal region, well, red has no presence here, so yellow would take all 3 victory points. In the cases of a tie for region control, the players would take the small value. So example, if up here, red happened to have had an army in this location, this would have been shared control, so there would have been a tie in the purple region, so each player would have only taken 1 point. Here in the orange region, it looks like, let's see, red has control here, and yellow has control here. So red would take 4 points and yellow would take 2. And then lastly, in the gray region, red definitely has control and yellow has 1. So red would take 3 points and yellow would take 1. Also going to gain points for control of provinces that have shrines. In this example, yellow player would receive a victory point for this shrine, and they appear to be the only player that occupies a location of a shrine. So yellow player would actually move up the track 1 additional. Step 6, collecting new destiny cards. Each player will draw back up 1 destiny card from the deck into their hand for use in the next era. And lastly, we're going to reorder the turn track. In this case, there's a tie for the most points, so we would actually leave it the same. However, if, for example, red were down 1 point, the player in the lead becomes the last player, and then the next player would become second last, and the player in last place would become first. So in this 2-player game, red would become first player. However, since they're both tied, their positions would remain the same. You'll play through that 2 more eras until the game is complete. So let's take a quick look at endgame scoring. Endgame scoring. After the 3rd era, you're still going to do the end of era steps 1 through 5. So gain your harvest, clean up the tokens, gain your influence, receive your region points, and receive your shrine points. Once you're complete, it's time to add up the influence track. How the influence track is going to work is determine where all players have ended in each of the regions. Then simply slide their tokens out of the number of influence where they are to then the tier of which their scoring will begin. Next, you're going to take whichever tier you're in. So let's start over here with gray. Yellow is in the 4 tier, red is in the 5 tier, and you're going to multiply by the number of destiny cards controlling that region. So in this example, yellow player will take 4 times 3, giving them 12 additional points, and red would take 5 times 3, giving them 15 additional points. So that would move yellow up the track 12 points, giving them 24, and that would give red an additional 15, moving them up 28. Continue doing the scoring for each of the 4 regions. So here, they both would gain 12 points. So that would move yellow 12 points up, giving them 37, and that would move red up to 40. Next, the teal region. Red players in the 3rd tier. 3 times 1 gives red 3 points. Yellow in the 4th tier gives them 4 points. And in the purple tier, red's in 3 times 2 is 6. And yellow is in 4 times 2, 8. And lastly, you're going to score any leftover resources. So the combination of your food and Bushido tokens, every 3 equals 1 additional victory point. In this case, only red had 3 tokens, yellow had none. So red would move up the victory point track by 1, thus giving them victory. In the case of a tie, the player with the least number of armies on the board is the winner, not the most, the player with the least number of armies. And in the case of still a tie, the player with the most resources in their hand would be the winner. In the case still of a tie, all players share the victory. And that's endgame scoring. So I'm going to go ahead and tear this down, everyone, and stay tuned as I bring you guys my afterthoughts. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that setup and how-to for the game Small Samurai Empires. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into my afterthoughts, starting with components. So during the Kickstarter campaign, there were a few small upgrades that I did get with this version. So you might notice that some of the pieces are a little bit different than your copy, potentially. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to judge the components on the copy that I did receive. And I'm definitely a fan of the upgraded components. The samurai meeples are well done. They're uniquely cut, so each color has a unique variant of the samurai, which I think is pretty cool. The order tokens in the wood are really good, which was an upgrade from their punchboard, I guess, cousins, which, again, not a fan of, and I would have really enjoyed using them quite a bit less. Otherwise, the board is pretty decent. Mine, I don't know, I have an odd warping to it that I just can't seem to flatten, but no big deal. The boards for the influence and the victory point track, I find it odd that they were just cards as opposed to actual boards. I would have much rather them be, a thick punchboard stock board, but it doesn't hurt the gameplay at all. The Destiny cards are good and bad. Good in the sense that they have a real heavy linen finish and it gives a good texture and tactile feel that I love. Bad in the sense that the stock is very thin, almost paper-like. So again, one good, one bad with that, but overall, the general components I'm very pleased with. If not, though, the lack of an insert. The whole game is basically held together with a whole bunch of baggies, but that's a different video for another day. So my thoughts on Small Samurai Empires is, I enjoyed this one. There was a lot of strategy involved, a little bit of planning luck depending on where your turn happened to fall and if you could manage to get yourself in the right position. So that was actually really good. Another thing that I enjoyed was the randomization each game of where you put your Bushido tokens and your food tokens as far as which provinces would have resources. So that additional randomness and variety was really good, so definitely a fan of that, because now no matter which gameplay you're doing, you have to determine, okay, do I want these resources on this province that's only worth in this region that's only 2 victory points for region control, or do I want to try to spread myself into the 4-point region area? So that kind of strategy is really good. The thing that I guess I didn't enjoy a little bit about the game was there were some actions that felt really challenging to leverage. So, if you're trying to move some of your armies, you move your samurai out of one province into another, it felt all too infrequent in a few of my gameplays where moving was a possibility. Reasons is that it seemed like either your guys were getting killed by others who might have attacked in front of you, or it felt more valuable to just simply add more armies into an area. So through the gameplays, I just didn't think that, again, it wasn't easy enough to move the troops for some reason. The other thing is to keep in mind, not good or bad, but just to keep in mind, is the castles. And because you only have 3 castles, essentially, you only have 1 castle token, if you're not building a castle in the first era, then you're only getting 2 castles built. So that also felt odd to me, because in that first era, I felt it really difficult to get a castle built. Reason being is because you have to replace 2 armies. But if you are putting 2 armies in the castle, if you're putting 2 armies on default placement, you're putting them in the capital city. The capital city is already where you're placing armies, so it felt weird to put a castle where the capital city already was. But then it was hard to move troops to another province to get 2 troops in that province. So it became just this weird vicious cycle of, how and when can I get a castle built and things like that. So that felt clunky to me, I guess, is what I'll put it. So why should you want to add Small Samurai Empires to your collection? For starters, I guess you enjoy area control games. This was a pretty solid area control game, and it felt buttoned up in the sense of, controlling a region, controlling the province, vying for control, and I really did like how they do that. The orders, again, it felt a little weird, but I'll save that for the why you should not. The other reason why you may want to add this into your collection, like I said, is the upgraded components are also really nice. I enjoyed the artwork. And there are, I think, 4 different variants, if I'm not mistaken, that really just add or change up the gameplay. Additionally, in every game played, the scores were pretty darn close. So all the gameplay, I never felt like there was a time where someone was just so far behind that during end game, their influence in a region wasn't going to potentially catch them up. So that level of keeping all players in the game until the end of the game, really good. Reasons why you may not want to add this to your collection, though, is the order mechanic, or the action programming mechanic of the game. Like I said, the way that it works, and because the game plays quickly, there's 3 eras, and in each era you're giving essentially 2 sets of orders. It goes quickly, and so your decisions have to be almost on point to fully execute a fleshed out plan, and that plan can quickly get usurped by others. So that level of frustration could potentially turn players off. So keep that in mind, I guess, if you're thinking about this one for your collection. But otherwise, guys, that'll do it for this one. If you have any questions about Small Samurai Empires, please leave a comment down below. I'm happy to answer them as best that I can. If you've enjoyed the content and you like the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I do appreciate that support. And as always, everyone, until next time, thanks so much for watching.